Rio is a helpless orphan who is sent to the slums after his mother is murdered. However, when a spirit goddess with mommy milkers gives him magic skills, he uses them to become overpowered so he can clap his enemies for revenge. It all starts with a boy named Haruto heading to university on a bus before it loses control and gets yeeted by the train. Meanwhile, in another world, a fragile boy named Rio wakes up in the slums and suddenly starts experiencing memories that are not his. He is confused to the point that he starts calling himself Haruto, but as he struggles with an identity crisis, some men enter the house. They get seated and begin feasting, and one of them tells Rio to wash himself because he smells like an average Annie and Dare viewer.
Brother, ugh.
As Rio steps outside, he is so hungry that he begins eating berries. Memories of Haruto flood his mind once again, but he reminds himself that he is Rio and he's living in these slums so he can avenge his mother. After remembering how she died, Rio wipes his tears and dresses up again. Just then, some women in white robes show up, and the elder one, Vanessa, sternly asks him if he has seen a girl with purple hair. When Rio hesitates to answer, the girl named Celia figures he might be intimidated and decides to talk to him politely. Rio calmly tells her he hasn't seen her, so when Celia suggests they look through the slums, Rio tells her not to. He explains that their group will stick out like a Discord mod at a gym, so Vanessa suggests they return after dressing up like common folks. The other girls, Christina and Rowena, protest, but Vanessa insists they head back. Before leaving, she asks Celia to check the vicinity for any magical presence, prompting her to cast a spell. This causes Rio's body to glow, and Celia realizes that he is overflowing with magic, which means he has the potential to become a mage. Since they don't detect any other presence, they decide to skedaddle, but not before handing him payment for giving them information. After Rio returns home, a masked person suddenly stabs him in the chest, but the coin pouch blocks the impact of the knife. Shocked, Rio looks around to find everyone else stabbed to death, and the masked man slowly starts approaching him with his knife. Right before he swings at him, Rio sees the spirit of a pretty lady, who appears for a few seconds and teaches him how to use his magic. After she disappears, Rio starts fighting back against the masked man, using magic combined with the fighting style he inherited from Haruto's memories. The masked man uses magic to enhance his abilities, but Rio aura farms him until he's knocked out. Just then, he notices someone tied up in a bag and opens it to find a purple-haired girl, who begs him to take her to the castle before passing out from the gruesome scene. Rio guesses she must be the princess those other girls are looking for, so he decides to carry her to the castle. On his way, he runs into the girls from earlier, but Christina grabs him by the shirt, accusing him of being a criminal. This causes Vanessa to draw her sword, and she orders Rio to accompany her to the castle or get game ended here. After Rio agrees, royal guards swarm his house and arrest the man who kidnapped the girl. Just then, a man in the crowd pops a pill, and the kidnapper mysteriously dies on the spot. Meanwhile, Rio is put under a torturous investigation where Charles, the vice captain of the royal guards, questions him. When Rio denies any involvement in the kidnapping, Charles starts treating him like a 90s housewife. Meanwhile, the kidnapped girl, Princess Flora, finally regains consciousness and is relieved to find herself back in her room. She then learns from Vanessa that the boy who saved her is currently being investigated. She asks her to bring Rio, so Vanessa and Celia show up and are horrified to see that he got folded like a lawn chair. At first, Charles is proud of his work, but when he learns Rio saved Flora's life, he starts sweating and tells his men to release him. After Celia heals him, Rio wakes up in a comfy bed and is surprised to see that all his wounds are gone. Celia apologizes for what he was put through, and Rio suddenly realizes she's the same girl he talked to outside his house. She also reveals that he'll have an audience with the king, who will reward him for saving his daughter by enrolling him in the Magic Academy. After taking Rio to the king, Celia takes him to the Magic Academy and asks him to come to her lab after school so she can teach him some basics. Before taking him to class, she tells him that most of the students here are crypto princesses, and they might not like him much. As soon as he enters the class, students start eyeing him like he's a vegetarian at a beat party, and once he introduces himself, they already start making fun of him. As he gets seated, Celia begins the lecture and asks the students to note down the problems, though she tells Rio to take it easy. After the classes end, Rio heads to Celia's lab, but when he knocks on the door, Celia rudely opens the door and tells him to read the Do Not Disturb sign. However, once she realizes it's Rio, she welcomes him in, and he sees that her lab looks like a skibidi bomb zone. Stepping inside, he comments that she looks pretty young even though she is a professor, and Celia reveals she's actually the same age as him, much to his shock. After pleasantries, she assigns him math problems, which Rio is able to solve with ease. Impressed by his skills, she reveals that his intellect is on par with Christina, the same freak who smacked him in the face earlier. What Celia does not know is that Ryo's memories have been merged with Haruto, who was a university student in his life. Celia asks where he learned to do maths, and he lies that his mother was the one who taught him. While serving tea, she asks Ryo if he had any issues on his first day, but he says it went mostly well. He then asks her to recommend some books so he can practice the new alphabet of this world. During combat training, the professor notices Ryo is quite good and asks him to strike him as hard as possible. As Ryo locks in, Haruto's memories of practicing martial arts take over, and he attacks the professor with all his strength. His sword skills are so cracked that the whole class pauses like it's a Fortnite live event, and after he catches the professor by surprise, he earns the man's respect. The old man says he has the potential to become a knight, but when Ryo says he has no interest, the whole class is shocked. Later, as he studies for exams in the library, Celia asks him to take it easy since he's only just joined. On the day of the exam, while others struggle with the questions, Ryo writes like a machine.
Hey yo, what the?
After he exits the room, he sees the students going about their day, which reminds him of the time a girl named Miharu betrayed Haruto. He recalls his childhood friend Miharu, whom he had promised to marry, but when they reached university, she got herself another man, which broke his heart. As the memories flood in, Ryo returns to his dorm, saddened by the tragic love story between Miharu and Haruto. However, he gets upset because none of it should concern him, because he is Ryo. When the test results come out, Ryo scores the same as Christina, the top student in their class, much to everyone's shock. Christina's Tier 3 simp Alphonse starts accusing him of cheating, but both Rowena and Christina scold him for throwing baseless accusations. Just then, Celia herself shows up and tells everyone that Ryo worked super hard, but even then, Alphonse refuses to accept it. Later in her lab, she congratulates Ryo for scoring the top spot, but she's worried the students will start Reddit hate threads against him. Ryo asks her if she faced the same treatment when she was a student, and Celia admits that the higher nobles would cause her troubles here and there. She says she had friends who helped her, and Ryo says he'll be fine too because he has her. Bro's Riz game is so strong it makes Celia blush, but she is flattered to learn that he sees her as a friend rather than a professor. After a little bit of teasing, Ryo tells her that he will come to her if he ever needs a friend, which makes her happy. She says he can cry on her jugs if need be. And Ryo jokes that there isn't much going on there.
Are you sure about that?
Which makes her laugh. 5 years later, during combat training, the professor reveals that an exhibition tournament is being held, and he needs the top 3 students as curers. He chooses Alphonse, Stuart, and Ryo, and even though Ryo's selection sparks controversy, the professor stands his ground. At the lab, Celia reveals that he can get scouted by the Knights pre-graduation if he does well, but he sternly says he is not interested. Celia then notices that he's grown taller than her, but he jokes that she's still a shoddy. She then asks him what he plans to do after graduation, and Ryo says he's thinking of touching some grass. Realizing he might leave the country, Celia offers him a job at the lab, reminding him that he's really good at keeping this place clean. Ryo says she'll get married soon, and it won't be a good look to have a commoner in her lab. Celia says she doesn't plan to marry anytime soon, but Ryo calmly says many will be interested because she's a charming woman, which makes her blush. She then asks where he will go, and he says he'll go to his parents' homeland Yagumo. He recalls his mother telling him about it and promising to take him there when he grows up, and Celia can see the pain he hides behind his smile now that she's head. A few weeks later, the tournament begins, and a knight named Alfred serves as a referee. As Ryo is called to the arena, he runs into Alphonse on the way, who tells him not to choke or their whole class will get ratioed. As he steps into the area, he is shocked to see that his opponent is Charles, the same guy who tortured him 5 years ago. The match begins, and despite going against the seasoned warrior, Ryo holds his ground, which causes Charles to attack him recklessly. However, Ryo uses this against him and disarms him, prompting Alfred to declare him the winner. Charles starts making excuses, but Alfred tells him to stop being a wussy and accept defeat like a true man. That night, Charles gets drunk with his buddy Race, telling him that Ryo's the same kid who was accused of kidnapping the princess 5 years ago. Unbeknownst to him, Race is the same mysterious guy who game-ended the actual kidnapper from the crowd. The next day, Celia eagerly waits for Ryo so she can congratulate him in person. She then sees him going to the back, where a girl hands him a love letter, which makes Celia feel hurt. That night, she goes over the students' postgraduate plans, surprised to see that Ryo didn't write any. The next day, during class, Celia asks the students to do something as basic as controlling their magical power, and Alphonse believes she's doing this, especially for Ryo since he's a commoner. She handles it calmly, telling Alphonse and his friend Stuart to demonstrate their skills. Once they do, she uses magic to close the curtains and outperforms them with ease. After class, Stuart praises Celia for her show earlier and then accuses Rio of being a diddler in front of her to make him look bad. However, Celia tells him not to throw accusations without any proof, and Rio calmly walks out without saying anything, which makes Flora sad. Christina tells her to stay out of his business, but Flora still feels bad because she hasn't even thanked him for saving her. Later, the class gathers for an outdoor practice, and Rana tells Flora not to be worried because all the stronger monsters have been culled already. The students are then told that they have to pass through the mountains using the shortest route possible, avoiding as many monsters as they can. Rana then argues that they might not have enough time, but Stuart and Alphonse use their connections with the military to have them mark out the safest path throughout the area. As the operation begins, Stuart tasks Rio with carrying everyone's luggage, and Rio abides without causing a scene. Flora gently asks him if he would like a hand, but he calmly tells her not to worry about it. She then turns to Christina and tells her that this is blatant racism against Rio, but before they can do anything about it, a horde of goblins shows up out of nowhere. Alphonse, being the commander, tells the boys to stay calm and instructs them on how to approach this, which allows them to overcome the obstacle with ease. Just then, he sees Rio looking in the opposite direction, unaware that Rio has detected another presence behind them. As Race watches from the shadows, he realizes Rio is far more capable than he imagined. As they continue, Alphonse confidently leads them out of the woods, but they come across a cliff that wasn't marked on the map. Christina asks him what he's planning to do now, but before they can answer, the group is attacked by orcs. When the orcs hurl spears at them, Stuart catches one in the leg and stumbles into Flora, knocking her off the cliff. Rio notices this and jumps after her, using magic to hurl her back up while he falls down into the forest. Before the others can check up on him, the orcs pace up their attacks, so they get into formation to defend themselves. With the help of Christina and the others, the squad manages to clear out the orcs and Rio, who is down in the forest, hears their cheers from up top. Despite landing like a veteran Super Saiyan, Rio does not understand his own magical powers and worries others will be suspicious of him if he comes out unscathed. Meanwhile, the students begin discussing how Flora was yeeted off the cliff, and Stuart, not wanting to take responsibility, hurls all the blame towards Rio. Alphonse adds that he must have jumped down because he didn't want to live with the crime of almost game-ending the princess, but Flora tried to argue that nothing of the sort happened. In the end, they decide to let it go and move on, but Flora doesn't want to leave Rio behind. She vows to help him even if it means getting left behind. But Christina and Rowena try to knock some sense into her. Just then, a beefy minotaur shows up, and not even Christina's thunderball can do any damage to it. Alphonse suggests using Ice Lance, but when even that fails, he tells the squad to skedaddle out of there. Christina and Rona leave because they assume Flora has already escaped, unaware that she went back into the forest to heal those who were hurt. Just then, she hears the minotaur approaching her and braces herself for a pounding, but Rio suddenly appears and slices off the minotaur's hand. Flora quickly drags the injured student away, and Rio deflects Minotaur's attack like he is a Sekiro veteran. Eventually, he finds an opening and takes the monster down, but when the others show up, he decides to just run away before anyone sees him. Meanwhile, Race notices his ability to use spirit arts and realizes Rio is from the Yagumo region. At the academy, Celia is about to enter the principal's office when she overhears someone talking about Rio. He says Rio has gone missing, and even though Flora advocates for him, they can't let the blame fall on Stuart because it'll taint his family name. Thus, he decides to paint Rio as the culprit and asks Duke Huguenot to attend to the matter. That night, Rio sneaks into Celia's lab, and she immediately embraces him, explaining she was worried sick. Later, she tells him he's been accused of a false charge, but Rio calmly accepts it because he knows only the people in power decide what's right or wrong. He then thanks Celia for everything she did for him over the last few years, and that's why he came here to say one last goodbye. He promises to write her letters using his alias, and when she asks what it is, he reveals it'll be Haruto. She then asks if she'll ever see him again, and Rio promises they will meet in the future. After a warm hug, she sends him off with a smile. But as soon as he leaves, Celia breaks down into tears. She recalls all the good times they've spent together, from meeting him for the first time to becoming friends with him. After Rio leaves, Huguenot visits the cells and asks one of his assassin girls, Latifa, to find and game-end Rio using the scent on his uniform. For the next few days, Rio Naruto runs through the forest, avoiding monsters and following the map until he reaches the neighboring kingdom of Gelark. At the main gate, he notices a board of wanted men and decides to keep his head low, unaware that Latifa is following him, going through the bustling town. He comes across a shop selling pasta and learns that Governor Lieslat came up with this idea. Rio orders one bowl for himself, and the taste reminds him of Haruto's world, making him wonder if Lieslat came from the same world as Haruto. After he's done, he asks the shopkeeper where he can get more, and the man points him toward the Rika Merchant Guild. Once there, he sees people eating menju, which is another dish from Haruto's world. As he steps inside, he is greeted by a worker named Lot, who takes him around the place, showing him all kinds of foods he's never seen before. Later, as he's served black tea, he's reminded of all those times he shared it with Celia. He then asks Lot if she used leaves from Lee's, and she says yes, revealing that they provide their customers with the highest quality of products to ensure more sales. Later, as Leto packs his stuff, Rio leaves a letter for Celia, letting her know that he won't be able to write for a while, but he's safe and sound. After he leaves, Lot's assistant mistakenly addresses her by her real name, Lieslat, but she quickly reminds her that she's under a guise. With that, Rio continues forward with lots of food when he runs into an unconscious girl in the forest. He stops to take a look at her, but she turns out to be Latifa, who tries to ambush him. He manages to avoid her attacks, but is injected with a poisonous dart, which blurs his vision. Realizing she's a beast girl, he uses healing magic to stop the poison so he can fight her at full strength. As the battle begins, Rio realizes she's super fast even without enhancing her body, which means one wrong move and he's toast. The two continue to exchange blows until Rio notices that she is too focused on her knives. This gives him the opportunity to attack her weak points, and he ends up disarming and pinning her to the ground. Assuming she's about to die, Latifa starts screaming for her mum, so Rio uses magic to put her to sleep before she attracts anyone. He then sees a collar of submission around her neck and realizes she is being forced to do this against her will. Using a spell he read from a book, Rio breaks the collar and suddenly gets a flashback of Haruto seeing a little girl in the same bus that took his life. Turns out, that girl woke up in the body of Latifa, who was a young slave to Stuart and his family. To make her submit, he put a collar around her neck, which would choke her every time she refused to follow one of his commands. Once she wakes up, Rio calmly tells her that if she fights him again, he might have to take her life. Getting hit with plist, Latifa immediately becomes submissive and agrees to stop. Rio then shows her the broken collar, and once she realizes it's off her neck, she completely breaks down in tears. After she's done, Rio gently asks who gave her the order, and she hesitantly says she doesn't know the name of her master. What she does know is the name of the person who used to torture and train her, and she tells him it was Stuart. Rio finally connects the dots that this house sent an assassin after him to save their son's image, so he sternly asks Latifa if she still plans to attack him. When she says no, Rio tells her she is free to go and that her gear is right behind her. Since beast girls are usually enslaved in the kingdom, he advises her to go to the west, to a land where humans and demi-humans live together in harmony. With that, Rio continues with his own journey, but realizes that Latifa is following him. He asks why she's still here, and she expresses her desire to go with him. Rio sternly says he did not break that collar with the intention to rescue or enslave her, but rather because he didn't want to take her life. However, Latifa, who has been imprisoned all her life, has no idea where to go and what to do. Even then, Rio reminds him that she tried to take his life earlier, and he cannot guarantee she won't do it again. Latifa is so desperate that she gives him the collar, asking him to put it around her neck to make sure she never attacks him again. Seeing her in this state moves Rio, so he agrees to let her tag along. Soon after, they take a break to fill their bellies, and Rio makes her a vegetable cheese sandwich, which she gobbles down with tears in her eyes. She tells him she has only eaten pet food until now, and Rio comforts her, promising her he won't treat her like this. With that, they continue their journey and reach the wilderness. Once Rio notices that Latifa is tired, he decides to set up camp since they are already across the border. That night, Celia gets a letter from Rio, and after reading it, she wishes that wherever he is safe and sound. Meanwhile, Rio decides to make spaghetti for dinner, and Latifa gets excited upon seeing it. He wonders how she knows what spaghetti is, but when Latifa fails to give a proper answer, he suspects she might have memories of a different world, just like him. That night, Latifa starts mumbling in her sleep about going back to Tokyo, and this confirms Rio's suspicions. The next day, Latifa wakes up before Rio and realizes he looks a lot like the boy she saw on the bus before it crashed. When Rio wakes up, she asks if she can call him Oni-chan, and Rio says he doesn't mind. He reflects on how she was so young when she died and then got enslaved in this world, so he takes it upon himself to put her heart at ease. And just like that, the duo keeps pushing through basically every Minecraft biome while also strengthening their bond each day. Being close to their destination, they set up another camp in the forest, and when Latifa begins having nightmares again, Rio uses magic to calm him down. When he notices someone outside, he leaves the tent to find a wolf outside. Just then, he gets flashbanged and ambushed by 4 demi-humans, so he uses his magic to defend himself, addressing them as demi-humans. He asks them that he comes in peace and wants to talk. Despite not trusting his kind, they eventually decide to accept his proposal since they have greater numbers. While the two of them, Orphan and Alma, leave to investigate the area, Sarah and Uzuma stay behind to talk to him. Sarah approaches him and starts off by telling him it's racist to call them demi-humans, so he apologizes before they cancel him on Twitter. As he introduces himself, Orphan and Alma spot Latifa in his tent and reveal that he's used spirit arts to put him to sleep. Without thinking, Uzuma leans forward and knocks him down, accusing him of diddling up one of their kind. As she keeps attacking, Rio asks them why they are being so aggressive, and Sarah explains that he's a suspect of kidnapping. He tries to explain that she's here by choice, but Uzuma refuses to trust him and keeps attacking. Eventually, the number game comes into play, and the demi-humans are able to take him down. After hitting airplane mode, Rio finds himself floating in endless water, and the spirit girl from earlier appears in front of him. He asks her who she is, but she says she doesn't know. All she knows is that she is connected to Haruto. After she says goodbye, Rio then sees Miharu in front of his eyes and wakes up, saying her name. He finds himself chained up on a bed, and Latifa immediately runs in, jumping on him and crying because she thought he was dead. Just then, the demi-humans from earlier enter the room with a sorry look on their face, and they are joined by an older person who apologizes to Rio on their behalf. When Latifa says she won't forgive them so easily, all the girls get on their knees to apologize again, and Rio forgives them because it was a mere misunderstanding. As Orphan unchains him, the older woman says he will receive a formal apology from the elders tomorrow, and until then, he can use this room to rest up. The next day, Rio follows her up the tree that holds their entire civilization, and she shows him another one, the world tree that holds the spirit of Dryas. She then asks if he ever had a spirit arts tutor, but he says he learned it from YouTube. After that, she takes him to the council meeting where the eldest demi-human Saldora welcomes him in. The woman he followed is Ursula, and the depressed Gandalf clone is Dominic. As Rio stands up to introduce himself, Sildora and the others bow down and offer a formal apology for the troubles he faced earlier. They also want to give him something to show gratitude, but since they don't know what he wants, they ask him to make a wish. Rio calmly asks them to take Latifa into their care, and Ursula reveals they were planning to do that anyway, since Latifa is attached to them. She also asks him to stay in their village for a bit so she gets used to it. Rio agrees to stay and even asks them to assign him a teacher so he can learn more spirit arts from them. Just then, a green-haired spirit appears in the room, and Ursula addresses her as Lady Dryas. Dryas immediately takes a liking to Rio, noticing that he has a faint spirit inside his body. She asks him if he's made a covenant with this spirit, and Rio says he has no idea. However, when he learns that a human's ability to use magic is greatly hindered by covenant, he starts to think that he might have made one without realizing it. Dryas asks if he can take a look in, and when he says yes, she gently cups his face, which makes his pickle jump out. Dryas then reveals he has a very rare person-shaped spirit inside of him, and those spirits who can take the shape of a person are one of the strongest out there. She adds that there used to be 6 of these spirits, but they all disappeared after the Divine Demon War 1,000 years ago. Rio turns to the elders and asks if that changes anything, and they say they might have to treat him as a saint, much like they do with Lady Dryas. After the meeting, Rio is taken to his new home in the village, and Latifa shows him around like it's a 5-star hotel. As they get to eat, they learn that the food they are having is grown in the Yagumo region. After they're done eating, Sarah reveals that she, Orphan, and Alma have been instructed to live here and serve him. Just then, Ursula shows up to ask for his permission, but he worries others might not like it when they see them living with a human. However, Ursula believes that if the others see him living peacefully with their kind, they will grow to accept him sooner. Besides, if Latifa lives under the same roof as the other of her kind, it will be easier for her to stay behind once he plans to leave. Rio agrees to let them stay and asks him to stop calling him sir, so they decide to call him master instead. Afterward, the girls show him around the place, and after a whole year, he becomes a well-accepted member of their community. Meanwhile, Race arrives in a desert with his subordinate and asks him to guard a cave while he retrieves something valuable from the inside. Soon after, Race returns with a massive egg and hands it to his subordinate, telling him it'll help increase their military strength. As they ride the griffin back home, Race notices a horde of wyverns following them with a smirk. Later, everyone gathers in front of the tree to celebrate Rio's one-year anniversary in this village and to watch Lady Dryas give Rio and Latifa a kiss of blessing. After the ceremony, the village holds a feast at night, and Rio finds himself squished between the girls. Both Sarah and Orphia are overdosed on beer, so they start acting overly touchy with Rio, which makes Latifa jealous. Soon after, Alma arrives and tells them not to bother Rio, but they argue that they want to be closer to him. They add that even though Latifa treats them as family, he, on the other hand, still hasn't fully accepted them. Realizing they feel left out, Rio promises to treat them better, which makes them all happy. After they leave to drink even more, Ursula shows up and comments that Latifa appears quite happy here. Rio says it's best if he tells her now because he has to leave soon, but it might wipe the smile off her face. Nearby, Race and his subordinate decide to set camp, and Race decides to investigate the area. Before leaving, he hands the guy a red pill and asks him to swallow it, saying it will allow him to track his location in case he gets in trouble. After that, he flies up and sees the wyverns still following them, which is a part of his plan. Meanwhile, Rio takes Latifa on a walk and asks her if she enjoys living here. When Latifa says yes, he stays silent for a moment but then tells her that it's time for him to leave the village. As she hears in shock, he explains that his original destination was always to the east. Latifa wants to come with him, but he says no because he has never been there before, and it might be too dangerous. Overwhelmed with emotion, Latifa runs away, leaving Rio to question his decision. Meanwhile, Lady Dryas notices a strange presence in the barrier and informs the elders, who quickly hold a meeting to discuss the approaching danger. As they send Sarah and the girls to scout ahead, Race returns to the wyvern cave, which is filled to the brim with eggs, while the wyverns chase the one missing egg he left in the forest. While he steals those eggs one after the other, Sarah and her squad fly over the pond and see Race's subordinate with a griffin. Before landing, Sarah asks them not to initiate combat, but the guy immediately cuts the griffin's rope and tries to escape, leaving them with no other choice. As the griffin flies towards the village, they decide to go after it, only to be interrupted by wyverns. The girls quickly deduce that the wyverns are after their stolen egg, so Sarah commands them to stop this before the village is damaged. Meanwhile, as soon as Race finishes looting the cave, he pops another red pill, which game ends his subordinate. As he falls from the griffin, the egg lands in the forest, right next to Latifa, for plot convenience. Just then, the wyvern alpha shows up and assumes she's the one who broke the egg. Back at the village, Rio learns that the ceremony is cancelled because of a wyvern attack, so he immediately runs to the forest to make sure Latifa is okay. As Latifa is getting beaten up by the wyvern, Alma quickly shows up and uses her magic to divert its attacks. When she tries to take the wyvern head-on, she realizes she is not strong enough and hides. However, Latifa learns that the village is at risk, so she becomes bait for the wyvern to lure him away from the people. Soon after, Rio shows up too, and she apologizes for running away like this. With the final boss here, the fight becomes rather easy as Rio beats the wyvern with his bare hands. As a last resort, the wyvern tries to hurl a fireball towards the village, but Rio makes it collide with a fireball of his own and forces it to explode inside the wyvern's mouth, which causes its death. Once the alpha falls, the other wyverns run away, and Rio is soon joined by the rest of the girls. Alma tells them that Rio defeated the wyvern all by himself, but the man acts like it's an average Tuesday for him. Sarah then reveals that wyverns are smart creatures who won't fight someone they can't beat, and since Rio took down their alpha, they decided to skedaddle. The next day, Latifa apologizes for how she acted last night, revealing that she already knew he would have to leave one day. She also thinks that she is a troublemaker for Rio, which is why he wants to leave. After Rio assures her that that's not the case, she hugs him tightly and says she wants to be her little sister forever, even when they are not together. He then tells her that he's going to Yagumo because that's where his parents came from, and he might find more of his family there. At last, Latifa decides to tell him that she actually died once before and was reincarnated into this world. But she is shocked to learn that Rio is the same as him. He didn't tell her before, but her mental state wasn't very stable when they first met, and also because he didn't want to have regrets about his previous life. Latifa asks if he still thinks about Japan, and Rio admits he does, but he decided long ago that he'll forget about Haruto and live as Rio in this world, which is why he wants to visit Yagumo. The following day, Rio decides to leave the village, and the elders come together to bid him farewell. Dominic gives him a mithril sword and sturdy armor as a parting gift, and Ursula provides him with elf medicine. While the beast people supply him with plenty of food and drink, Rio realizes it's a bit too much for him to carry, so Soldor grants him a space-time cache, a magical item that works as a video game inventory. After saying goodbye, Rio finally flies away, leaving Latifa in tears. Back in Celia's lab, she realizes she hasn't received any letters from Rio and wonders if he's okay. Unbeknownst to her, Rio has already arrived in Yagumo. 2 weeks later, Rio is still searching for clues regarding his parents, and even though he has had no luck so far, he knows he is from here because everyone here has dark hair. Soon after, Rio finds two shotties, Sahyo and Ruri, working the fields and asks them to take him to the head of the village. Ruri reveals that her grandma is the head, so she immediately takes him to her. Once there, Rio introduces himself and reveals he's traveled through many lands to get here. The old woman introduces herself as Yuba and asks why he's here, and he says he's come looking for someone who once used to live here. Yuba invites him in, and he tells her his parents used to live here around 15 years ago. Rio then says their names, Zen and Ayame. But before he can speak further, Yuba sends the girls away because she doesn't want them poking their noses into Rio's family business. Afterward, he reveals his father died even before he could get to know him, so he lived with his mother until she died too. Rio says he wanted to come here so he could make graves for his parents and honor them with a proper memorial. Yuba then drops the bomb that she is Zen's mother, which means she is Rio's grandmother. She then reveals that she's already made graves for both of his parents and takes him there so he can pay his respects. She also reveals that his parents had to lead Yagumo for some urgent reason, and those who knew they would never return made graves to remember them. Rio asks if she's comfortable sharing their reason, but Yuba tells him she will when the time is right. She then asks him to live with her, reminding him that he's her grandson and she wants to watch over him. She then reveals that she lives with Ruri, who is the daughter of Zen's older brother, making her Rio's cousin. She then asks him to stay with them again and promises that she won't tell anyone about his parents, at least for now. After Yuba leaves, Rio stays there for a bit before joining her and Ruri for dinner. The next day, Rio wakes up early so he can make them breakfast, but is distracted when Ruri shows up looking like a Twitch thought. However, once she realizes they have a house guest, she panics and runs back to her room to change. Later, Rio decides to make miso soup for everyone, and during the process, he learns that both Yuba and Ruri know how to use spirit arts. He then surprises them by making boiling water using his own spirit art, which is something not even Yuba can do. Soon after, Ruri's friends Chin and Sayo arrive, and after introductions, they dive into the delicious miso soup Rio made. After they are done, Yuba asks Shin to take Rio to Dola's place because he might want to become a hunter. Shin worries Rio might not be suitable for a job because he's built like a short, slender man, but Yuba assures him he's more capable than he looks. To test his skills, Shin agrees to take him, but after he leaves, Ruri notices that Sayo is getting the hots for him. Meanwhile, the boys meet up with Dola to hunt, and Rio outperforms Shin by a mile, much to his frustration. On his way back, Rio realizes he got all dirty while hunting, so he literally pulls out a full-blown hot spring bath out of nowhere. After relaxing in the hot water, he exits the bath to find Ruri and Sayo outside, who are amazed at just how much he can do with his spirit arts. Just then, Ruri smells something fresh on Rio and even pushes Sayo into him so she can have a sniff too. Rio reveals it's the smell of soap, which amazes them even more. When Shin and his friends show up, she tells them Rio made a bath using spirit arts, but Shin gives him a cold shoulder because he's already outshining in everything. Ruri scolds him for being rude, and even his own sister, Sahyo, doesn't like the way he treats Rio, which frustrates him even more. As the days go by, Rio becomes an eye candy for the ladies for helping around on the farms, and Sahyo develops a crush on him. After a bountiful harvest, Yuba tells him they will sell their extra rice to the royal capital, and she wants him to guard their transport team. Meanwhile, at Yuba's place, Shin and his friends get into an argument with a man named Gon who has invaded their house without permission. When Gon tries to rizz up Sayo and Ruri in the baths, Shin prepares to fight him, but Ruri tells him not to because Gon is the son of the neighboring village's head. She then asks Gon why he is here, and he explains he needs to spend the night at her place because his cart broke and it'll take time to repair. When she tells him to go to the guest house, Gon tells him he's gonna be her husband anyway, so it won't change much if he swipes her V-card early. Hearing this, Shin loses his cool and attacks Gon, but the man easily blocks it and starts choking him. Just then, Yuba shows up and orders Gon to let Shin go. Afterward, she scolds Gon for going too far and tells him to use the guest house at the edge of the village for the night. As Gon and his men casually walk away, they lock eyes with Rio. Gon tries to kick Rio's leg but ends up tripping, so he walks away in embarrassment. After he's gone, Yuba asks everyone to return to their homes and forbids them from leaving until Gon and his men leave. That night, Ryo gives the girls a red protective amulet and asks them to place it somewhere in the room. Meanwhile, Gon and his men rest in their guest house, and they are definitely planning something sinister. The following day, a tax examiner, Hayate, arrives in the village, and both Yuba and Ryo welcome him into the house, offering him a fine meal. That evening, Ryo is practicing his sword skills outside when he notices the girls secretly watching him. As they join him, they ask why he practices martial arts, and it takes him into a memory of Haruto promising to protect Miharu when he was young. He tells them he had a crush when he was young, and learned martial arts to protect her, but they're no longer in contact, and she's found herself a different lover. That night, while the girls are asleep, Gon sneaks into their room, but the red pill Ryo gave them starts to glow. Before Gon can stab Ruri with his sausage, Ryo shows up and catches him red-handed. Seeing him in this state reminds him of the man who murdered his mother, so Ryo drops all the pleasantries and beats the living bejesus out of him. Luckily, Hayate and his men show up in time to stop him from outright game-ending Gon. While Sage heals Gon, he tells his men to notify the kingdom so Gon can be punished properly for his crimes. Meanwhile, Ryo leaves to touch some grass, reflecting on how he almost took someone's life, which makes him the same as the person who murdered his mother. The next day, Hayate informs the girls that Gon has been taken into custody, and they thank Ryo for saving them. However, Ryo believes he caused them a great deal of trouble and apologizes, and Yuba vaguely comments that he's just like someone she once knew, which piques Ruri's curiosity. A few days later, as the village is ready to transport rice, Yuba thanks Hayate for not only taking Gon to prison, but also protecting their transport. Hayate tells her not to mention it, as he is the servant of the kingdom, and it is his duty. She then hands him a letter and asks him to give it to his father, Lord Guki, so Hayate promises to deliver it once he returns to the capital. The transport leaves with Hayate's crew, but once they part ways, Ryo, Shin, and Sayo are tasked with protecting it. Several days later, they arrive at the royal capital of Karasuki and check into a hotel. After settling in, Dola asks Ryo and Shin to come along with him, and together, they make sure Gon and his party hit the new prison dock early. However, Shin is not happy because he wants to crack Gon's coconuts with a hammer. Later, they head to a shokudo where Dola treats them with kamutan. Afterward, Shin finally drops his tough guy act and thanks Ryo for saving his sister, but he tells him not to mention it. The next day, Ryo and Sayo head to the market to buy some stuff, and on their way back, he asks if she'd like to have some kamutan. He also tells her that Shin wanted to get some for her so she can eat it, and make some for him at home. Soon after, they stop at a jewelry stall where the lady asks Ryo to get something for his cute girlfriend. Sayo quickly tells her they're not together, but Ryo suggests she get something for herself. Despite hesitating at first, Sayo browses through the stock and finds herself a pretty hairpin. She tries it on and absolutely loves it, but when she learns it's an expensive piece, she tells Ryo not to buy it. However, Ryo is a certified Rizzler and buys it for her anyway. As they walk back, they spot some chaos in the crowd and see a man trying to kidnap a girl named Komomo. He quickly jumps in and saves the girl, handing her to her guard. When more of the guards show up on the scene, Ryo grabs Sayo's hand, telling her it's time to skedaddle. Later, Lord Goki informs Hayate that someone tried to abduct Komomo, and she was rescued by a brave young man. Hayate questions who this man is, but Lord Guki tells him that the boy vanished before the guards showed up. He then hands him the letter Lady Yuba entrusted to him and informs him that it is of the utmost importance. Reading the letter, Lord Goki gets shaken up and asks Hayate if he has met someone named Ryo. Meanwhile, Ryo and Sayo return with the supplies, and Sayo tells Shin she finally tried kamutan, so she'll do her best to recreate it once they return home. When she's asked about the hairpin, Sayo starts blushing, making everyone realize she's going to get smashed tonight. Just then, Hayate shows up at the door, and they hold a meeting with his father, Lord Goki, and his wife, Kayoko. They reveal that they both were attendants of his mother, Ayame, and she was actually from the royal family of Karasuki, which shocks Ryo. 20 years ago, the Karasuki kingdom was at war with the Rokuran kingdom, and Ryo's father Zen volunteered to be a soldier. He had a natural gift for both spirit arts and martial arts, and due to his skill, he was granted the rank of a warrior noble. During that time, Lord Goki put his skills to the test, and after realizing that he was the real deal, he recommended that Zen become a guard of the royal family. He was assigned to be Ayame's personal guard, and soon after, she started to grow a liking towards him. A truce meeting was held to end the war, but the prince who came as an ambassador grew a liking towards Ayame. That night, he sent his men to abduct her in her sleep, but Zen was there to protect her and beat up his men. Furious, the prince demanded they execute Zen and make Ayame his wife, or he would call off the truce. That is why, with the support of his father, Ayame made the decision to run away with Zen. Lord Goki adds that he hadn't heard of them for all these years until he read a letter from Lady Yuba. He is certain that Ryo is Ayame's son, so he asks him to join them in the castle so the king and the queen can meet their grandson. The next day, Ryo finally meets King Homura and Queen Shizuku, and they tell him to drop the formalities. As they get seated, Shizuku asks about his parents, and he boldly tells them they have been long dead. Homura asks for details, so Ryo tells them his father died before he got to know him, and he lived happily with his mother until he was 5. Then she died too, and he has been on his own ever since. He says her cause of death is brutal, but they insist he tell them how it happened. He finally reveals that she was murdered in front of him by a man named Lucius, who used to work alongside his father as an adventurer. One day, while Ayame was out, Lucius entered their house and forced him to drink a strange fluid. By the time Ayame returned, Ryo was half unconscious, and Lucius took her life in front of him. After her death, Ryo was dumped in the slums, so he lived as an orphan for the next 2 years. Then one day, he rescued a princess and was allowed to attend a prestigious magic academy as a reward. Even though he was treated harshly there, he found someone who made it a whole lot easier. After 5 years at the academy, he set out on a journey to return to his homeland to fulfill the promise he made to his mother. His grandparents are under the impression that their daughter hated them, so they are relieved to learn that she still considers them family. Homura then asks Ryo about the man who assassinated Ayame, and he says he will never forgive him. He says revenge is the only thing that fuels him, and even though Homura understands, he asks him to tread carefully because revenge often leads to misery. After that, Homura asks him to have a duel with Lord Goki, as he is the strongest warrior in the kingdom. His reasoning is that Lucius might also have game-ended Zen, so if he seeks to fight him, he must be strong enough to at least hold his ground against Lord Goki. As they head to the practice field, they run into Komomo and her guard, who informs them that Ryo was the one who saved them earlier. As the duel begins, Ryo impresses Goki with his impressive speed and skill, prompting him to use his strongest attack. However, doing so makes him drop his guard, and Ryo uses that sliver of a second to turn the tables. To everyone's surprise, Ryo ends up defeating Goki. With that, he prepares himself to avenge his parents, ready to accept the ugly truth of this world. That night, Ryo tells Ruri that he is his first cousin and the prince of this kingdom, and Yuba confirms his claim. At first, Ruri believes they are messing with him, but Yuba assures her that Ryo is telling her the truth. She immediately gets on her knees to bow to him, but Ryo tells her not to treat him like royalty. Ruri agrees on the condition that he stops calling her Miss, and instead uses her first name, and Ryo agrees to this. He then reveals that he plans to leave the village next year, which makes Ruri sad. She questions whether he'll return to see her again, and Ryo responds that he will if permitted, though his formality irritates her. The next day, Ryo meets up with the others, and they notice that he and Ruri are addressing each other in an informal manner. When asked why, Ruri says they're living in the same house, so she asked him to be easy around her. As the days go by, Ryo becomes a significant member of the community and even helps set up water turbines for the village. During the next planting season, he teaches a new way to plant crops and notices that Sayo is lagging behind. When he goes over to help her, he tells her he wants to supervise everyone in the village once he's gone, and this catches her off guard because she did not know he was leaving. She asks if he'll visit regularly, but Ryo says it won't be possible because he wants to travel the country. He also says he hasn't told anyone, but since she's a close friend of Ruri, he wanted to inform her beforehand. Hearing this, Sayo begins to tear up but quickly wipes them off before Ryo can notice. Soon after, Ruri joins her and she acts as if she's fine while working, though it's obvious it has deeply hurt her. That evening, Shin returns home to find her sobbing and asks what's wrong. Sayo once again pretends to be okay, but Shin figures Ryo must have done something and decides to wipe the floor with him. However, Sayo stops him, saying she's sad because Ryo is leaving the village, so Shin decides to have a word with him. Arriving at Yuba's place, Shin bows down and begs Ryo to stay in the village, which shocks him. Sayo soon joins him and apologizes for the trouble Shin has caused before driving him away. As the days go by, Sayo puts her heart into training her spirit arts, her body, and her sword skills. Meanwhile, the crops are finally harvested, and the village holds a festival as usual to celebrate it. During the festival, Goki challenges anyone to beat him in wrestling, while his wife Kayoko helps around with other tasks. While Rio is thanking her for the help, Sayo shows up and asks if she can have a moment alone with him. She takes him to the woods, and Rio notices that he is still wearing the hairpin he got her last year. Sayo then finally admits that she is in love with him, and even though he is surprised, he apologizes because he cannot return her feelings. When he says part of the reason is that he is leaving the village, she quickly tells him to take her along, revealing that she's been working really hard so that she wouldn't slow him down. She begs him to take her, but Rio calmly refuses, saying he cannot return her feelings. Even then, she says she doesn't care if he loves her back or not. All she wants is to stay by his side. Despite that, Rio tells her no and walks away, noticing that Shin has been watching him all this time. After he leaves Sayo in tears, Shin arrives to comfort her, followed by Lord Guki, who asks her if she loves Rio enough to cast aside the village she was raised in. Sayo says yes, so he decides to train her to become stronger. A few days later, Rio's time to leave finally arrives, and he thanks Yuba and Ruri for everything before setting out on his journey. On the way, he runs into Sayo waiting for him at the village entrance. She wishes him well on his journey and promises to do her best, and they say their farewell before parting ways. Soon after, he arrives in the Beast People's village to meet with Latifa, and she greets him with a big hug. As they feast with the elders, he tells them about Yuba and Ruri and that they want to meet Latifa. He also reveals he plans to stay for only a few months this time, but he promises Latifa that he will return sooner this time. When the elders ask if he needs anything on the journey, he reveals he was thinking of having a portable house in this space-time cache. They decide to leave the house building to Dominic and advise him to spend his time with Latifa and the others in the meantime. That night, he returns home and notices that everyone has grown up a lot since the last time he saw them. Seeing the girls goof around makes him feel like he's finally home, at least for now. A few days later, the girls wake up to Rio's scream and rush to his room to find him panicked with a pink-haired shawty in his arms. The girls assume he ate some cookie last night, but he assures them that it's a misunderstanding and he doesn't even know who this girl is. After some back and forth, the girl finally wakes up and reveals she's the spirit who formed a covenant with him. Rio then recalls Dryas telling him that he has a spirit in him and connects the dots. However, he does not remember forming a covenant with her and realizes that she is the same girl who appeared when he was attacked in the slums. When he asks her these questions, she sadly tells him she does not know. When he asks the girls, they say they haven't seen a human-shaped spirit before, so they have no idea how this works. He then asks her for her name, but she says she doesn't have one and would like him to give her one. The girl asks him why she's been calling him Haruto this entire time, and Rio promises to explain later. He then starts talking to the spirit, learning that they have the ability to talk telepathically. She asks if he wants her to call him Rio, but he says he's fine with Haruto as well. As for naming her, Rio says he needs some time because this all happened too quickly, and his brain is barely working as it is. The girls then suggest they talk to the elders because Lady Dryas is a person-shaped spirit too, and might have some advice for them. Rio asks the spirit to come along, and she casually stands up, putting her whole stock on display before generating a new dress with mana. Seeing her beauty reminds Rio of Muharu with hair like warm spring flowers, so he decides to name her Aishia. Sarah reveals it means warm spring, and Rio adds that he thought the same when he looked at her. Soon after, they take Aishia to the elders, who cannot figure out why she lost her memories upon awakening. Just then, Lady Dryas shows up and introduces herself to Aishia. After talking with her, even Dryas can't figure out why she doesn't remember anything, and when she asks her what she knows, Aishia says she only knows Haruto. Rio then explains that Haruto is the alias he used in the Straw region because he is wanted there, purposely hiding the fact that Haruto is the person he once used to be. Dryas then asks Aishia what element she is most comfortable with, and she says all of them, which shocks everyone. To test her powers, they take her outside to duel Rio, and the two put on a show for everyone. They engage in battles of both martial arts and spiritual art, to the point that Rio has to go all out against her. When things start to get a little too intense, Lady Dryas calls off the match before they turn the whole village into a crater. They all acknowledge that Aishia is really strong, but since she is still not stable, Dryas takes it upon herself to train her. For the next few weeks, Aishia trains her spirit arts while also learning more and more about the world she is in. Soon after, Dominic takes Rio to the portable house he made and asks him to set a foundation before using it. Rio thanks him for the help and tells him to inform the other elders that he will be leaving tomorrow, as everyone else leaves to make him dinner. Sarah stays behind and advises him to talk to Latifa because she isn't gonna take this lightly. That night, while relaxing in the bath, he realizes he has been very selfish ever since Aishia woke up and hasn't made time for Latifa. Just then, Latifa enters the bath and asks if she can wash his back, and when he says no, she gets quite upset. Eventually, Rio agrees to let her do what she wants, and the two use this time to bond. She tells him that in her previous life, her name was Suzune, and she's telling her this because she wants to know what his name was back then. Rio tells her he used to go by the name Haruto in Japan, but he told everyone a different story. Latifa then reveals she used to take the same bus to school every day, and there was an older boy who would sit across from him daily. Rio realizes she was there when the accident happened and apologizes for being a terrible brother. But Latifa hugs him and asks him to come home soon. The next day, before leaving, Rio receives teleportation crystals from the elders so he can come back anytime he wants. He also receives an ear pin that lets him change his hair color so he can disguise himself in the straw region. After saying goodbye, Rio takes Aishia with him, and on the way, he explains that they're going there to meet Celia. Meanwhile, Celia dearly holds the only letter she ever received from Rio when Charles shows up and starts flirting with her. Celia puts up with his bees until a messenger arrives and asks him to attend to his duties. Soon after, Rio and Aishia arrive in the straw region, and Rio uses the ear pin to change his hair color. He heads to a bakery to buy some sweets, where he learns that it's crowded because there's going to be a royal wedding tomorrow. That night, Rio sneaks into the academy with Aishia, who uses her spirit form to break her in. Arriving outside Celia's room, Rio finds the lab completely emptied and decides to check the other rooms. Using Aishia's magic, he asks another researcher about Celia's whereabouts, only to learn that she's in the royal palace because she's getting married tomorrow. To make it worse, she is getting married to Charles, the same idiot who tortured Rio all those years ago. The man also reveals that things went south in the recent war, and they barely managed to hold peace negotiations with the enemy. However, to maintain unity during this time of peace, the royal family has decided on a political marriage between Celia and Charles. He also tells them that the previous Duke, Philip, has fled the kingdom with his family, and tensions are at an all-time high between the nobles. After putting the man to sleep, Rio leaves the lab and tells Aishia that he needs to see Celia in person before the wedding. Aishia wants to help him, so she decides to use her spirit form to find a safe passage inside the royal palace. That night, Celia is having dinner with her father, Roland, and Charles, who reveals he plans to have a big ceremony so everyone can see that their houses are aligned. As the men discuss other trivial matters regarding the marriage, Celia sits there silently with a gentle but fake smile on her face. Charles also discusses the rumors about some nobles, including Roland, having been in contact with the previous duke, but Roland sternly tells him that he's loyal to the kingdom, and these are false accusations. Despite that, Charles continues to speak to him in a condescending manner, and Roland stays silent because he doesn't want a civil war to break out. Meanwhile, as Rio waits outside the palace, Aishia relays to him a safe route through telepathy. Inside her room, Celia is mentally preparing herself to marry Charles and become his property, and she holds on to the letter Rio sent her years ago for comfort. Even after all these years, she still slaps her kitty every night thinking of him, so she decides to burn his letter. Just then, Rio sneaks into her room, which startles her at first. But once she recognizes him, she sprints right into his arms. She mentions that he's grown quite tall, but Rio jokingly says that she's still a 4-footed menace, which annoys her. Celia gets all excited to hear about his stories from the last 4 years, so she immediately makes him tea like she used to when they were at the academy. Rio knows she's trying to hide her pain, so he straight up asks her if she's getting married to Charles. Celia keeps a smile on her face and says yes, so Rio asks her if this is something she really wants. Celia gives him a political reply, telling him that she consented to this marriage, but Rio is still not satisfied and asks if she's doing it for her family's sake. Celia chooses to keep her act, saying she's ready to marry, and Charles is a kind and chivalrous man.
You're a liar.
When Rio looks at her, all confused, she gets frustrated and asks if he's going to marry her instead. However, she then quickly regains control of her emotions and tells him she was just joking. Then, all of a sudden, she tells him that he should leave and even asks him not to attend the ceremony tomorrow because it will be too embarrassing for her. Rio just stands there without saying a word, so she pushes him outside and gives him 20 seconds to leave. After he's gone, Celia thanks him in her heart for coming to see her again and also apologizes for kicking him out because she can't let him get tangled in this. Outside, Rio tells Aishia that he wasn't able to find out Celia's true feelings, but he does know that she doesn't want this marriage. Even when she says so, Aishia tells him to do something about it, and whatever he does, she promises to be by his side. The next day, Race arrives in the kingdom and is greeted by Charles himself, who asks him to stay for a while. Race reminds him that even during peace, they are from opposite sides, and it'll cause problems if they are too friendly. As the two chatter, Ray suddenly senses a spirit nearby and gets his guard up. Meanwhile, as Celia dresses up, Charles arrives and introduces her to his 6 other wives, which leaves her in shock. The first one, Tanasia, explains to Celia that even though she is from a noble family, she is the last amongst them and will be treated as such once she marries Charles. Just then, Celia learns that Christina is here to see her, so Celia calmly asks the other wives to continue this later. After Christina arrives, she demands Charles' other wives leave them so she can have some private time with her old friend. After exchanging pleasantries, Christina apologizes to Celia because she knows this marriage is being held to cover up the mess her father left when he fled the kingdom. Celia tells her that she is marrying Charles because she wants to, but Christina doesn't buy it because Celia has lost her smile. She says she used to look up to him when she was a student, so if there's anything she can do to help, all Celia has to do is ask. Celia looks past her request, wishing her the best of luck in resolving her family issues. Soon after, the wedding ceremony officially begins, and the people start calling Celia the Silver Bride due to her silver hair. Charles uses this opportunity to let Celia know that he's gonna explore her hidden chambers tonight. As their carriage moves towards the palace, Celia suddenly hears Aishia's voice, telling her to look to the right. Once she does, she spots Rio in disguise and begins sobbing. When Charles asks her why she's crying, she tells him she's just overwhelmed and quickly composes herself. As the carriage stops, Charles gets up and extends his hand, but before Celia can take it, she sees Rio running towards her. As the guards surround him, Rio starts tossing them like dominoes until he's facing the last line of defense between him and Celia. Charles is confident his elites will take him down easily, but Rio breezes past them and punches him in the gut. As Charles drops to his knees, Rio suddenly holds a knife to Celia's throat, which sends everyone into panic. Using telepathy, he explains to Celia that this is all part of his plan and all she needs to do is stay quiet for a bit. He then asks her again if this is what she really wants, and Celia continues to keep up her act. Rio then asks if she's been forced into this marriage, and her reaction says it all. He says he can end it all if she asks, and even when he knows he's being foolish, she means too much to him, which is why he can't let her go without trying everything. He asks one last time, and Celia says that if she puts her feelings in front, it will cause trouble for her family, which is something she doesn't want. Rio says that it's okay to be selfish sometimes, and if she were really down for this marriage, she wouldn't be staring into the void like it owes her rent. After some thought, Celia tells Rio to take her away, and the guy runs through the crowd while carrying her in his arms. After jumping over the foot soldiers, he uses spirit arts to deflect the mages, and Ray starts to suspect that this guy might be the same Rio from 4 years ago. To test his strength, Race hurls a dark magic ball at him, and Rio manages to deflect it, which impresses Race. As Rio continues forward, the head of security, Alfred, deploys aerial troops in pursuit and leaves the Nessa in charge while he leaves with the ground troops. Meanwhile, Rio runs over the rooftops to avoid the Griffin units, but when he realizes they're faster than he expected, he hands Celia over to Aishia, so he can shake them off easily. After seeing him empty-handed, the aerial troops begin firing at him, but he expertly dodges all of their attacks. After briefly engaging with the ground troops, he decides to move on, but is stopped by Alfred, who challenges him to a duel. As the two begin, Alfred proves to be the strongest foe Rio has faced so far, and the battle proves even more challenging because Rio refuses to hurt him. However, Alfred believes he is being underestimated and decides to use his full strength. With one big attack, Alfred causes a huge explosion, which apparently obliterates Rio, but in reality, he's used the glow as a cover to escape. Meanwhile, Celia is on a cliff nearby with Aishia, and as they're hit with a thunderstorm, she prays for Rio's safety. Soon after, Rio arrives, and Celia is delighted to see him in one piece. She thanks Rio for giving her hope because before he came, she gave up on life and was gonna go through with the marriage. Rio tells her that he owes her a lot and that he will do anything to make her happy. As they decide on their next destination, the mountains around them are all struck with different colors of lightning simultaneously. Aishia quickly realizes that these are signs of summoning and asks Rio to help them while she takes care of Celia. Soon after, Rio finds these summons captured by goons and rescues them. One of these summons turns out to be his childhood love, Miharu, which leaves the man in utter shock. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you made it to the end, comment, "I love feet" as proof.